Raise the metabolic rate. Don't starve yourself into fat loss. Another big, big mistake. And I see it very common in the carnivore space. Here's why.
Anthony, how did you find carnivore?
Well, I didn't realize it was carnivore, but it was about just over 20 years ago. I was doing some research on a gentleman called Vince Gironda. Now, for those who don't know, Vince Gironda was they called him the Iron Guru. He was the bodybuilding coach of coaches, trainer of trainers, and he trained some very famous people. He trained Clint Eastwood, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Frank Zane, I believe it was the late now Carl Weathers, and a few other people. And he was an advocate of the steak and eggs diet. So when I first started this journey over 20 years ago, researching this guy, I didn't realize that he was advocating, well, the carnivore diet. And so he used that diet to get a lot of his clients, he called it the high definition diet, protein and fat diet. So back in the early 40s, 50s, even 60s, a lot of the bodybuilders back then were using protein and fat, a very low carbohydrate diet to get themselves into a lean condition. And I didn't realize that it was the carnivore diet until then, 20 years later, wherever it was. I think it must have been about 3 or 4 years ago, I saw the Joe Rogan interview with Dr. Sean Baker. Sean Baker? That's right, yeah. And and then I put 2 and 2 together. Hold on, this guy is eating the steak and eggs diet. That was what Vince Gironda was preaching. Now, Vince Gironda was about light years ahead of his time. He was so intelligent. He knew every origin, every insertion of the body. He knew everything about the human body, and he was just ahead of his time. Long before Atkins got involved, long before everybody, he was really early on to this. And then I thought, okay, so this gentleman, Sean Baker, he's eating meat, salt, and water, which is one, as we know, is one way to do the carnivore diet. The other way, of course, is all animal products. Then you have the Dave Mack way, which is, let me write. So it's ground beef, eggs, some cheese, and lately it's been salmon roe, if that's correct. So.
That's right, yeah.
So that's where I discovered it 20 plus years ago, and then put 2 and 2 together when I saw Dr. Sean Baker on the podcast, and then eventually it was Dr. Anthony Chafee and a lot of the work with Bart Kay, and the rest was basically history after that. So yeah.
So you've actually been following this way of eating for about 20 years?
I have not. I knew about it 20 years ago, but I didn't realize this. I guess I didn't know the science behind it, and didn't go into detail as to, anthropology, what we were eating millions of years ago. I just thought of it as just another way, a quick way to get you lean, and then you can go back to eating traditionally as you normally would. I saw it as more something seasonal. I didn't see it as the proper human diet, so to speak. And that all changed about when I saw the interview, and then of course I did a lot of research after that. But I'll take you back. I can take you back to the very beginning, how it all started, if you want to know. But then, because I didn't call it the carnivore diet, it was never called the carnivore diet for me. It was always called the steak and eggs diet. And then, of course, I was introduced to the ketogenic diet. The only time I started using the carnivore diet was when I saw Dr. Sean Baker, and then there was a name for it. So it was the high fat diet before that time, or the steak and eggs diet, protein and fat diet, or the very low carbohydrate diet, or the ketogenic diet. But it was never the carnivore diet as it is popularized today. Does that make sense? I hope I explained that. So
yeah. That's great. So, and how are you? Well, actually, first, so if Vince Gironda basically came up with this, and that's what he was using to train with people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, what changed in bodybuilding that we moved away from that to more like this kind of very carb heavy kind of training?
Yeah, a lot of that changed when the performance enhancing drugs came into play, and of course, training styles have changed and philosophies have changed with training frequency, and then of course, based on that, the nutritional guidelines had changed, well, not guidelines, but more so philosophies changed around, and then you had the huge boom of the supplement industry that came in, and then supplements played a role. And so that's what I personally believe in, watching it change over the years. I've been a personal trainer since 2001. So I sort of went into the industry when, before it was even popularized with the fitness influencer movement, before even the big YouTube influencers were around. Personal training was reserved for well, typically it was for somebody who had discretionary income to have a personal trainer, or for sports specific. And so I got into personal training specifically to train athletes. It was sprinters and marathon runners. And then I watched slowly over time the dietary guidelines had changed. Clearly, we knew after the late 70s when the low-fat saga kicked in, and then people started eating low-fat foods, and then it went from there. That's my take on it anyway.
So,
Yeah.
uh, um, how are you using it yourself, and how do you also use it with the training that you do with others?
Well, when I first started personal training after about 2000, in 2004, the first show, The Biggest Loser, was televised on TV, and all of my fellow personal trainers, we were all just in awe of the transformations, and then we just thought, wow, could this be where the market's changing? Is it moving away from sport specific, and is there a niche now for body transformations? We saw these incredible transformations take place, and that's where the niche changed. So everybody was getting out of what we were doing and getting into training people, the everyday person, just to get in shape. Now, I spent from '04 to '09 messing it all up, Dave. Like, I had no idea how to get people in shape. I just thought exercise was the Mr. Fix It. Because after I'd seen these American trainers absolutely flog their clients, I thought that was what was needed. And if I wasn't training my clients to a point whereby they were puking or just crawling out the door needing an ambulance, I wasn't doing my job right. Now, early on, I also had this, and a lot of PTs go through this, especially at the very beginning. We have this illusion of action, thinking, have I given enough to my client? Have I trained them enough? And I want them thinking that they can't train beyond my intensity, beyond my own. They can't train on their own, beyond the capabilities that I push them. So they would need me as a trainer to push them to that level. And that way I'd be able to retain them as clients. Well, that didn't work, because I was losing clients. Do you know what a churn rate is? Churn rate is do you know what that is?
So, yes, but please explain, just in case some of the viewers.
In business, you've got churn rate, whereby you may have a certain amount of subscribers and how many of them drop out as opposed to sign up. So do you remember back in the day, it was the fitness first craze? Before it was like, okay, so I used to train at a fitness first, and the one that I trained at was the one at Melbourne Central. And in Melbourne, I used to live on Burke Street. At Melbourne Central was one of the busiest. It's like over 12,000 members, and there were uni students coming in. I was in my early to mid 20s at the time, and there were uni students coming in, and I would have there were like 25 personal trainers there, and my personal training manager we used to have this thing called triple packs. They would pay like $100 and they'll get 3 sessions, and you would have 3 sessions to convert your clients in. Well, that was also a way in to try and wow your clients, get them to believe that you can fix their problem, and try and basically get them to sign up with you afterwards. Well, I was the only PT that had the highest triple pack churn rate, meaning I would train a client, convert them. 3 or 4 weeks later, I would lose them as a client and get another one coming in. So I knew that my approach was not working, but I guess my clients stuck around because I was a nice guy. I
Were,
actually
were
cared.
the Sorry to interrupt, but I'm just interested. Was the churn rate something to do with you were going all biggest loser on them?
Oh, it's a combination of going biggest loser on them, combination of pushing them too hard, and then of course, as a PT, it is a results-based business. You must produce results, and if you don't produce results, you lose clients. Like if your car needs fixing, take it to a mechanic. If you're having issues with your marriage, maybe go see a counselor, go see a lawyer, whatever. If you can't get yourself in shape, the last resort would be to hire a personal trainer. Well, I was way out of my depths, Dave. Like, meaning I had no idea how to get people in shape. In fact, if somebody came to me for fat loss or weight loss, which is what I wanted to do, I would just be nervous. And, oh man, another weight loss person. How am I going to deal with this? And then if you throw enough mud on the wall, hopefully some of it's bound to stick. That was my theory behind getting people in shape. If I can just push this person long enough, hard enough, hopefully they get results. And that didn't happen. Okay. So that went on for 5 years. If you wanted a trainer, would give you a great workout, give you a bit of a sweat, have a bit of a conversation, be your friend, do things outside the gym. Early on, they said, I remember one of the quotes I was saying, they don't care how much you know, they just want to know how much you care. Well, I cared a lot for my clients, but they weren't getting results. So they were dropping off for those reasons, not getting results, being pushed too hard. And that was it. And that's where my churn rate came from. So all of that changed in 2009. Have you seen the movie Sliding Doors?
Yes.
Do you remember that movie? Yes.
Gwyneth Paltrow?
You got it. Yeah. So they use, I guess, after that movie came out, they use this as a sliding door moment. They start using it as a way of where you have a paradigm shift or you're a different trajectory in your life. It just changes. Well, my sliding door moment happened in 2009 when I decided to take a one-way ticket and move to London. Okay. So I left Melbourne. I was actually, I had a girlfriend at the time too. So I kind of told her it was over when I was in London. So she had no idea. It was terrible, terrible, terrible. And I'm in London now. I was there during the heart of the GFC. Like, this was June, London, heart of the GFC, and it was during the Wimbledon. And I was handing in resumes everywhere. You name it. I was doing Starbucks. I was doing Sushi Planet, a few other places I couldn't remember. But I met a girl, and she knew a guy, and this guy was a manager of a gym. I went to try and interview at his gym, but they weren't. He said to me, Anthony, based on your specialties, we don't do that kind of stuff. However, I know of another manager at this really, really premier exclusive gym in London. It's called the Chelsea Harbour Club. And I'll be able to get you an interview with this guy, and you can go, and then hopefully I'll just put in a good word for you, and hopefully it'll be good. Now, I researched the Chelsea Harbour Club. Are you ready for this? There's like paparazzi photos of Princess Diana being papped there. So it's the creme de la creme. This gym is known for all affluent clients, the who's who in the public eye. When I went to, it was so funny. I walked in for my interview, and it was during Wimbledon. I've gone downstairs, and then I see, hey, that's Roger. That's what are they doing? You know what I mean? Like all these famous names. Then I go upstairs. I'm like, hey, wasn't he in that movie? So I'm getting interviewed. This guy hires me as a PT. Now I'm working at the Chelsea Harbour Club. Don't know how I landed a role there. I'm way out of my depths. Most of the PTs are in their mid to late 40s. Some are even PhD graduates. And I'm feeling like inferiority complex 101. And so the reason why I say this is because through the Harbour Club, I started training a doctor, a really, really switched on doctor. He knew his stuff, man. He was not a traditional allopathic kind of doctor. This guy was really good. And one day I met after about 6 weeks of knowing him and training him, one day I'm at his practice, and I said to him this, and I opened up to him and I said, listen, I've been at this fat loss game for the last 5-6 years, and I still have not been able to unlock the key. What is the secret to helping people drop body fat and get in shape? He said one sentence, Dave, and this was the sliding door moment for me since that time. Are you ready? Here's what he said. Anthony, if you want to understand health, fat loss, body recomposition and aging gracefully or youthfully, you've got to understand the influential power of hormones. That's the line. I'll never forget that line, okay? Now, I was looking at this man like a deer stunned in headlights saying, what do you mean by hormones? What do you mean by that? He said, Anthony, don't you know hormones are these chemical messengers and they tell the cells how to perform certain tasks? Like blood pressure is governed by hormones. Sleep patterns, emotions, they're all governed by hormones. It's all regulated based on hormones. He saw me and he said, you look like you've had a nice tan. Did you? I said, I was away in Spain. He goes, awesome. Did you know hormones govern that process? I said, tanning? Yeah, there's a hormone that governs tanning. Hormones tell the body how to perform tasks. Growth and development is governed by hormones. Hunger and satiety is governed by hormones. Guess what, Anthony? Muscle growth, muscle wastage, fat gain, fat loss, all of these are also governed by hormones. Now, he said there are 7 of them, 7 hormones, 7 major hormones that drive the fat burning. It's not really fat burning, but I'll use the word because it's very commercial, and fat burning process and the fat storing process, 7 of them. There are a few others, but there's 7 major ones. He said 6 of them are lipolytic, meaning they help the body mobilize fat for energy. 1 of them causes the body to store fat for energy. Now, your homework, he said, is to go and figure out what these hormones are, and let's come back and speak about them tomorrow. I couldn't sleep that night. I'm thinking, wow, are you mean to tell me that if I can get these hormones right, then maybe that might mean that my career might improve? Because I was so frustrated, nervous. I couldn't keep clients, Dave. It was terrible as a PT back in the early days. I went back the next day after I finished clients, and I said, I'm assuming these are the hormones. I couldn't get, I think I got 1 right and the rest were wrong. He gave me the 7 hormones, and I'll run you through them in a sec if you want to know, along with the next line. He said, lifestyle drives hormones, drives health. The lifestyle choices that we make on a daily basis, whether we are doing them on purpose or by default, meaning proactively or reactively. What we eat, when we eat, how much we eat, how we exercise, if we exercise, what time we go to sleep, how we plan around sleep. All of these lifestyle interventions, how much sunlight we get, they drive hormones, and the hormones do the rest. Now, early on, when we're younger, we don't know this because you think of a brand new car. A brand new car, you jump in it, the ignition starts with the first go, okay? But over time, the wear and tear of the car, you may have multiple times to start the car up, like an old Kingswood. You know, back in the 70s, they'd start up straight away. For those that don't know, it was one of those old school Australian cars. But now you try and start one up in 2024, and it doesn't start up as crisply as the way it did in the 1970s. Well, it's the same with hormones. Early on, when we're younger, we have these organ reserves. Our hormones are really upregulated, especially men and women, of course, for procreative reasons. Testosterone's through the roof when we're between 18 and 21. Growth hormone, of course, and many of the other hormones, they're upregulated. But then the errors in judgment of poor lifestyle interventions from there on starts to down-regulate these hormones. And once we reach 30 plus, what we used to get away with, we no longer do. So it's a combination of poor lifestyle choices, but thinking, you know how many clients I've had since the time I was, since London, they would bring me photos of what they were like before they were 30. And they will say, I used to be really skinny. I don't know what happened after 30, because they haven't really changed their lifestyle, or they didn't realize that what they were doing was so contraindicated. But because they had these organ or hormonal, the hormones were firing well, they didn't realize it was bad. And no news means good news. So they kept doing the same things, like eating sugary cereal for breakfast. Okay. And so once I knew these hormones and certain lifestyle interventions that either upwardly regulate them upregulate them, or stabilize them. I'll give you an example. Cortisol, which is one of the 7 hormones, is a stress hormone. We call it Mother Nature's alarm. Now, in the human body, it's the only hormone that continues to escalate as we age. Every other hormone takes a nosedive. Testosterone in men go down, progesterone, estrogen, DHEA. Then you've got growth hormone. We go through a process known as somatopause. After 30, it starts to drop off. So some hormones, insulin, the number one hormone to get right, the number one hormone, I call it the damage control hormone. There was a socialite back in the 1930s called Will Rogers. He made a great statement. He says, when you find yourself stuck in a hole, stop digging. Stop digging, okay? So when you find yourself in an untenable position, it pays you to stop exasperating the process and digging yourself deeper into a hole. Now, if you're carrying excess body fat and you want to stop storing body fat, then it pays you to stop secreting the one hormone that's responsible for doing that. And that's why we call it the damage control hormone. So the 7 hormones, I'll tell you right now what they are. We have insulin, the damage control hormone. We have ghrelin. Some of my clients use gremlin to remember that one, because ghrelin is the hunger hormone, and it's almost like you're picturing a salivating gremlin and you're about to eat the house down. Ghrelin is a beautiful hormone when you understand its power. It's a secretagogue. It is a hormone that stimulates other hormones. So the reason why I tell my clients hunger keeps you younger, remember that one, hunger keeps you younger, because if you ride the ghrelin wave long enough, you then start to secrete growth hormone, which is the other hormone, which is known as the fountain of youth anti-aging hormone. Okay. There are celebrities in the US who purchase exogenous hormone. There are anti-aging clinics that prescribe for, I guess, deficiencies, but really it's a powerful, powerful hormone. Well, the human body can still produce it, providing you know which lifestyle interventions to take up to maximize its production. So we have insulin, we have ghrelin, we have growth hormone. Okay. Then we have, of course, cortisol, the stress hormone. Now, cortisol is a low-grade adrenaline that stimulates abdominal fat synthesis by inhibiting growth hormone. I can tell straight offhand when somebody has cortisol dysregulation physically. They look like a potato with toothpicks as limbs. Okay. So they've got what we call trunk-related adiposity, or visceral fat, or belly fat. And now, cortisol can be your friend or a foe. When it's your friend, it's designed to do this. It actually, I call it the carpe diem hormone, the seize the day hormone, because it's the hormone that actually gives you the energy you need to seize the day. So this is why the dawn phenomenon, we have cortisol levels rising up early part of the day, because it mobilizes glycogen for energy. Okay, so liver produces, of course, glycogen, and then it releases that for fuel, which is why we don't need to have breakfast, because the body's producing, the liver's dumping in all this glycogen early on, all this glucose early on for fuel. So cortisol is responsible for that. Now, when it's working against you, though, oh my goodness, it can literally bury you when cortisol is working against you. It breaks down its goal. When you're chronically stressed, its goal is to bring energy, glucose to the cells. Why? Because when you're experiencing a stressor, the body is looking for instant energy to get it out of its stressful situation it's in. So cortisol is the hormone that does that. And it does it through various means. Number one, it breaks down valuable muscle tissue, converts that to glucose, and uses it to feed the cells. That's a bad thing. This is why when you have somebody with a lot of body fat and they've got no muscle tissue, they've got chronically elevated cortisol levels. Now, it actually breaks down peripheral fat. So on the outside of someone's body, they're lean, their legs, their arms, their forearms are lean, but it stores visceral fat. Visceral fat is pro-inflammatory because it stores these adipokines, and they drive inflammation. Okay, so you've got cortisol. By balancing cortisol over time, it's important to understand if you do not control cortisol, then another hormone takes a cascade, and that is testosterone. That's the next one up. The body has the same building materials to construct cortisol as it does testosterone. And here's what happens. Just imagine a seesaw. You've got the building materials are in the middle. You've got cortisol on one side. You've got testosterone on the other side. When you are burning the candle at both ends and stressing out, you are squandering, wasting all the limited building materials in favor of cortisol. And so now you don't have much testosterone. So the cortisol-testosterone ratios is heavily altered when you're under stress. In fact, one way to elevate testosterone in men is to get them to understand stress management, to manage cortisol. Does that make sense? So, go.
Wow. Just you know, when you talk about things like you know, this is the easy way to increase growth hormone. It's just to, you know, push through the ghrelin, and
Yes.
you know, managing stress is what's going to help you with testosterone. But for most people, they go to a doctor and they've got an issue with growth hormone or testosterone. And it's like, here, have an injection. We'll sort you
Yes.
out. No problem.
Yeah. So if there's a problem with the fruit, it's in the root. And so if you think of the human body as a kinetic chain, a series of links, and it's only as strong as its weakest link. Now, pharmaceutical interventions, they go to work where the chain is snapped, but they don't address what's pulling the chain. So you have a problem, there you are. The genetic link is snapped right in the middle there. Okay, rather than learning what's pulling on the chains, I'll just get you to reassemble that little link there. And that's the problem. It doesn't really give us the bigger picture. Because granted, if you were to follow, I love the chiropractic quote, Mother Nature requires no assistance, only no interference. Mother Nature requires no assistance, only no interference, meaning a good health practitioner learns how to eliminate the barriers to allow the body to naturally heal itself. The greatest healer for the body is the body. This is why you see animals, when they get sick, they just hibernate in the corner. They go out, you know, if you have a sick cat or a pet, they'll just go into a corner and they just heal and get out of the way and let the body do what it's designed to do. If you get out of the body's way, it'll heal you. You know, we give it more and more and more when it's really seeking less and less. Okay?
Yeah, there's like the animals is like, I'm not going to eat and I'm just going to lie in the corner and sleep and rest. And like,
You
we'd
got
probably
it.
be doing the opposite. We'd like, here, have some chicken soup, have some orange juice.
You got it.
You know,
Well, why is it when we're sick, Dave? Why is it when we're sick, the first sign is a loss of appetite? If you notice it, you're sick, you don't have appetite to eat. Why? Because digestion, all parts of digestion, you've got mastication, digestion, assimilation, defecation, all 4 stages of digestion, they tax the body of most of its energy reserves. This is why eating almost induces fatigue. After we eat, we want to hit the hay. So because it expends so much energy and your body's looking for resources to repair and repair what's going on right now, it doesn't stimulate hunger. In fact, my parents are Greek, and so we have this, I'm not sure if it's a tale or not, but we know that when you've got appetite to eat, it means you're slowly getting better. So we sort of use that. If you're sick and then now you actually want to eat, well, that's a sign that you're probably on the tail end of it. So we've got hormones. It's a system whereby it's homeostasis is heavily regulated. The body needs homeostasis, but then when you have one hormone go out of whack, it creates a domino effect for other hormones, a cascade effect. So if your cortisol is running rampant, it's going to impact other hormones like DHEA. It's going to impact testosterone. Okay. So we have insulin, the key fat storing hormone, managing insulin. We've got understanding hunger signals and what they really mean. Hunger is the perfect. Hunger doesn't mean eat. Hunger means hunt. It doesn't mean eat. It means hunt. So if you understand that, it means that our ancestors, they exercise preceded nourishment. So training is in a fasted state. First you go out and hunt for game, then you eat, and then of course you fast because you don't know when your next meal is going to be. Okay? So
Sorry
really,
to interrupt, but that's very interesting for me because I've always found that it's much easier to exercise fasted.
yes, absolutely. A lot of people, when you become fat adapted, when your body is using ketones for energy, then it makes so much sense to you. But if you're sugar adapted, if you are going from meal to meal relying on sugar to drive energy, you may struggle, you may hit a wall. But most of, and here's the other good part to it, and that is after you finish training, when you've secreted, depending on your intensity, of course, but if you've gone high intensity, which you should, but Kay will tell us, yes, all exercise should be high intensity, and I agree. Once you go high intensity, you've got all these counter-regulatory hormones. You've got the other ones I haven't mentioned, epinephrine and norepinephrine. These are catecholamines. These are similar to cortisol. They drive alertness. Okay. The body does not know the difference between the stressor from an exercise or whether you're being chased by a grizzly bear. Doesn't know the difference. So it drives epinephrine and norepinephrine through the roof. And these two hormones are highly lipolytic. Now, here's the problem with that. If you're exercising and you're having a meal, let's say between some people have a peri-workout, they might drink something with sugar in it to keep, cortisol in check, and I understand that. But with the beauty comes the beast. If your goal is to mobilize fat for fuel, you've just completely antagonized those hormones. Growth hormone is completely negated when you elevate insulin. So if you have a meal that contains carbohydrates around your training for fuel, for energy, you can say goodbye to fat loss. It's not going to happen. It's the party pooper hormone I call insulin because it robs the fat loss party for everybody. Once that goes up, that hormone, you can't burn any more body fat because the body is no longer in withdrawing mode. It's in depositing mode because it's a storing hormone. And it's like a bank. You can't, if you're not depositing, you're withdrawing. You're doing one or the other. So the body's depositing energy. It's not withdrawing energy, you see. So that's what happens. And it will continue to do that, which makes sense. Now, the other thing to note based on insulin is that the last meal you have at nighttime, if you have it too late at night, again, you're going to antagonize growth hormone. There's a certain time to stop eating and sort of, you want to go to bed a little bit hungrier, a bit peckish. Ghrelin needs to go up a little bit because now you're secreting growth hormone. Too late for bedtime will rob you of growth hormone at night with a meal. Okay. So let's go through them again. Insulin. We've got insulin, we've got ghrelin, we've got growth hormone, we've got cortisol, we've got testosterone, we've got epinephrine and norepinephrine. And the last one we haven't spoken about is leptin. Leptin. Leptin comes from the Greek word leptos, meaning thin. Thin. Okay, so what is leptin? It's a hormone that tells the body when to stop eating. It tells the brain, we're done with food for now. The satiety hormone. Here's the problem. It's produced in fat cells, and the more fat you carry, the more leptin you produce, to a point whereby the brain gets to a place, and I don't like using the term resistance, But Kane, I speak about this all the time. Insulin resistance, leptin resistance, you can't measure them. There's no apparatus that measures insulin resistance. So it's speculation. But there is a term they call leptin resistance, whereby the brain cannot hear the signal by leptin. You think of like the brain as a keyhole and leptin as the key, but you've got too many keys trying to unlock one keyhole. Now you sort of destroy the hole, the keyhole, and the brain does not know when to stop eating. So when you're carrying a lot of body fat, it's a perfect negative feedback loop whereby the brain doesn't get the signal and it continues to stimulate hunger for you and you never get satisfied. I'll tell you a little secret. I trained a guy who owned a confectionery company, and I knew about the power of leptin, and so did he. He said to me, Anthony, you know one thing that gets people coming back to buying these bars? I said, leptin? He goes, yes, leptin. What do you know about leptin? I said, well, it tells the brain when to stop eating. And when you have sugar, it inflames the receptors. So when you're having sugar, it inflames the receptors in the brain, and the brain doesn't know when to stop eating sugar, which is one reason why people keep eating sugar. Isn't that interesting? So
wow. So no wonder it's so food companies love putting sugar into the food.
Well, I think it was Dr. Anthony Chaffee was saying, and this is of course medical malpractice, but he was saying that he was overhearing a doctor saying, do you know what my favorite pharmaceuticals are the pharmaceuticals that create side effects for other pharmaceuticals. So not only are you using the one pharmaceutical that supposedly fixes your problem, but now you're having side effects with that pharmaceutical, and it's causing you to take a second and a third and a fourth because of that first one. And it's a similar thing in the sense that, you know, the difference between misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation is I innocently gave you the wrong information. Disinformation is when you know you're leading them down the wrong path and you're trying to cause harm. And that's the difference, okay? So when you understand leptin and you understand the power of this hormone, now this may be an evolutionary hypothesis, but I'll share it with you. Millions of years ago, mankind went through famines and feasts based on the seasons. Now, during the summer, animals are out of hibernation, fruit grew on trees, animals are available to be hunted, no ice was on the trees. And of course, the nights were a lot shorter and the days were longer because the sun would set much later in the day. So during the summer, mankind uses window of opportunity to fatten up. Of course, because the nights are a lot shorter, mankind didn't sleep as much. Now, over the winter, no fruit grows on ice. Animals are in hibernation. The nights are a lot longer. Mankind would stay more, I guess, indoors if they had whatever they stayed in. So they spent most of their time sleeping. So this is my evolutionary hypothesis, it might be wrong with this, but our bodies were wired to store fat when we're sleep deprived and to mobilize fat when we are basically sleeping better. And the hormone that's governing that is leptin. That's the power of this hormone. So you understanding these 7 hormones and then knowing how to then use certain lifestyle interventions on a day-to-day basis, and we're talking proactive lifestyle interventions, like when you're about to get hungry, and now I've told you I've given you a different perspective on hunger. Hunger equals fat cells are shrinking. Hunger keeps you younger. Hunger is rejuvenation. Hunger equals go hunt, don't go eat. Hunger lasts about 17 minutes. Okay, when I give you that, now you've changed your perspective around what hunger is. And rather than you being reactive to life circumstances, you become more proactive. And that's how you create self-autonomy. This is how you start being in control of what your body's doing every day. So that's the 7 hormones. There are certain lifestyle interventions that upregulate hormones or manage other ones like insulin, like cortisol. And by doing so, you then regain control of what your body is doing. That's basically the philosophy behind the LeanSeven, which is what I preach.
So, I mean, it's amazing to hear it laid out this way, because it's like everything that I've learned over the last 20 months about diet, nutrition, and it's just everything falls into place.
Yes.
But when you're working with someone,
Mhm.
do you find yourself having to kind of go through this with them and explain it to them, or do you just make the recommendations for what they should do with their diet and exercise based on this knowledge?
That's a great question. When I work with somebody, now here's a keynote to make: work with those who deserve your time, not who need your time. Work with the deserving, not the needy. Because why? Because life doesn't give you what you need. Life gives you what you deserve. You don't reap a harvest because you need it. You reap a harvest because you deserve it. You know, you can't look at the ground and say, hey, give me a crop. The ground looks back up at you and says, who's this clown that's come to me with their need, but not their seed? Okay? We have a saying in the marketplace: show your seed and hide your need in the marketplace. Show your seed. And what's your seed? Your willingness to work. The get up early, stay home late attitude, your willingness to do the job. The track record of that is important. Once they're deserving of my time and they're willing to do the work, I love this line: Anthony, just tell me what I have to do and I'll do it. Okay. Now, early on, you've got to be careful with which clients you choose, because there are different personalities. And you probably know that already, speaking to so many people. There are some people, there's a saying in leadership training: don't fire a cannon at a rabbit. Okay. Don't make them drink through a fire hose. You need to give them the right artillery that gets the job done. And if you give them one thing and they do that right, I'm not going to tell you why unless you ask me. And I love clients that ask me why. But if you don't tell me why, I'll tell you how. Most importantly, the why justifies the how. That's what allows you to keep going every day, by having this unquenched thirst for knowledge. When you know the why, it justifies the how, Dave. So I would tell some clients, but only if they've asked me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're meeting your clients mainly in the gym or at the track or something like that? And if so, like, I hear a lot of people say weight loss starts in the kitchen. Like, you can't lose weight. You can't outrun a bad diet. So, like, how does your advice work to them? Like, are you actually consulting with them about what they should be eating and how and when?
Yes. People love analogies because the brain thinks in images. If I said the word ribeye right now, you picture a ribeye. You don't picture RIBEYE. So by you showing analogies to people, they understand analogies are the best. So exercise equals fitness, diet equals fat loss. Okay? Abdominals are not built, they're revealed. A six-pack is not built, it's revealed. Okay, so six-packs are built in the gym, revealed in the kitchen. And so if you just imagine you're lying on a bed, and this is the analogy about, let's say, getting your abs out and getting rid of this, what we call belly fat, subcutaneous fat. You're lying on a bed, and you lying there, well, I'll say naked, I guess, but if you're lying there, your musculature, so your body represents the rectus abdominis, your entire musculature. By the way, it's one muscle, and the tendons, the linear alba that runs vertically, and you've got the tendons going across that give it the multiple look. It's not really six muscles. It's one muscle, and the tendons give it the multiple look, for those who want to know. Anyway, you're lying there, and you lying there naked represents your lean body mass with no fat at all. Okay? Now, we've got three layers. We've got a duvet cover, we've got a comforter, and we've got a flat sheet. if you get rid of the duvet cover, you can sort of start to see the silhouette of your body. If you get rid of the comforter, now we can see more of the silhouette. Okay, you get rid of the flat sheet, and boom, there are the abs right there. I've got a photo. I'm not sure. Maybe we can post it as a display. I've got a photo, and I tell you what, I was really fat in the before shot, and then I had this I guess a challenge with a friend to get my abs out without doing any abdominal exercises. And I actually titled that "No Abdominals Were Harmed" during the making of this after picture. Okay, because I did not do one ab exercise, and sure enough, they were right there, completely shredded. So you got to understand, when if I train Dave Mack's abs vigorously, put you through a giant set right now, and I mean you'll be so sore. What will be sore tomorrow? Your abs or your fat? Your abs will be sore. So really, the training does not. my friend Chris Cruikshank once said this: doing abdominal crunches to get a six-pack is about as effective as bobbing your head up and down to get rid of a double chin.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, I've had, I mean, my stomach's pretty flat now, but in the past I've had this massive stomach, and I've been doing crunches, and then kind of thought, I wonder how this is actually going to work in practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I've seen your abs. Oh my goodness, incredible abs. But I can tell you right now, had you not have changed your lifestyle interventions and your diet and everything else around, there's no way those abs will come out. There's no way. I've been at gyms for multiple years and looking at the same people, looking the same or worse year after year, and still not getting it, not understanding, and I want to help. I want people getting results. Okay. So abdominals are built in the gym, rebuilt in the kitchen. One of the things people need to know is about body fat. If you don't know what body fat is, how it works, its various functions, how it gets formed and stored in the body, you don't have a hope or prayer in actually getting lean. You need to learn about body fat. So body fat cells, they do one of three things. They of course hypertrophy. Think of a water balloon. A water balloon, okay? So a water balloon inflates, so do fat cells. So they hypertrophy. So when you're experiencing obesity, you're overweight, your fat cells have actually enlarged. Then, of course, they atrophy, they shrink. When you see somebody who's toned, and I love that word, toned, they've just got shrunken fat cells. Fitness models, bodybuilders, or anybody else with a six-pack, they've got similar fat cells, but their fat cells have shrunken. So you've got the dermis, the epidermis, the skin layer, then you've got the muscle belly, and then you've got the subcutaneous fat between the skin and the muscle. Now, as you get leaner and leaner and the fat cells start to shrink and shrink and shrink, and now the skin almost sits over the top of the muscle, and that's what gives it that toned look, you see. So understanding fat cells is about understanding, how can I get them to shrink? How can I shrink them in a way that now I can start seeing the silhouette of my body? That's what being toned means. Now, the last thing fat cells do is they hyperplaze. They split and multiply like many other cells do. When you're experiencing late childhood, early puberty, extreme bouts of obesity, fat cells not only expand, but they split and they multiply. Like a morbidly obese person would have anywhere in the vicinity of 300 billion fat cells. Okay, now there's a lot more opportunity for them to be filled up with even more fat. The fatter you get, the fatter you become.
It's like when you talk about like kind of self-fulfilling prophecies. It's one of those kind of things where it's just, it just keeps building on itself.
It builds on itself. And now on the flip side, let's say you can't change it overnight, but you can turn it around overnight and go another way. When you start working with the body and understanding how it works and how it functions, and the leaner you get, these hormones work so much better in a lean state. I'll give you an example, testosterone, since we spoke about it. You might have a set of twins, and these twin boys, they produce the same amount of testosterone, total testosterone, but one twin is 22% body fat and the other twin is 12% body fat. Okay. Even though they produce the same total testosterone, the free usable testosterone, we call it free testosterone, will benefit the lean person. And it's the free testosterone the body uses for building muscle, for having vigor and sex drive and so forth. The free testosterone, not how much total testosterone you have, but how much free is left over, because it gets bounded by proteins, albumin and SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. There's two proteins that rob the body of testosterone. Well, guess what? In your fat cells, there is an enzyme called aromatase that converts your testosterone to estrogen. So the more fat you carry, the more estrogen dominant you are. Does that make sense? So now,
Yeah.
when you get yourself leaner, in a leaner state, all the other hormones start flourishing better from a lean state, namely testosterone.
So interesting. And, I mean, I've been eating the way I'm eating now for 20 months. And I haven't really done that much exercise. I joined a gym and then realized I didn't have time to go to the gym, and then that all went out the window. But my body composition has changed so much just because of the nutrition.
Yes.
And I mean, it's the body composition change that I would only imagine seeing on someone if they've been going pretty hardcore at the gym. But it's nothing to do with that.
And I bet you probably have a lot of people say to you, you must work out heaps to look like that. Or like, you must have done so much work to get that physique, and show them before and afters. And you're thinking, yeah, I did a lot of work in the kitchen.
Yeah. I've had friends ask me about it, and then when I tell them what it actually is, it's almost like it'll be on the phone or something, but it's like they're backing away slowly, going, oh yeah, I might try that someday. Yeah.
Yeah, I better go. Yeah. So, because first, okay, first they're saying to you, why are you doing that? Why are you doing it that? Why are you just eating meat? Why are you just eating animal? Why not any plants? First, it's the why. Then when you got yourself in shape, they'll say, how did you do that? Oh my God, how did you do that? First, it's why, then it's how. So that's, in a nutshell, when it comes to exercise. Now, granted, exercise is very important, but it's not more is better or less is best, but precise is best. Precise. Okay? You treat exercise like the drug ketamine. Okay? There's a dose, it's dose dependent, and there's a frequency dependent. Now, everybody's goal should be to maximize muscle tissue, especially in our later years. Maximizing muscle tissue. It is the number one anti-aging organ. So the more muscle we have in our frame, the better we increase our probability of living longer. The problem with muscle mass is performance dependent, meaning to grow muscle tissue requires high intensity of effort. Let's take the calves, for example. They are the most overly used muscle group, with the exception, I guess, of the thumbs these days, but the calves are the most overly used muscle group in the human body. Why doesn't everybody walk around with 22-inch calves, circumference of their calves? Why? Because the intensity of effort is not intense enough to warrant an adaptive response. Meaning walking, jogging, whatever you're doing right now is not enough for the calves to say, wow, best you grow muscle tissue to protect yourself in the event that exercise. And by the way, this is what muscle mass is. It's an adaptation to a training stress. Just like we said earlier about tanning, the reason why the body tans the skin is to make it less penetrable by the sun. The darker the skin gets, the less penetrable it is by the sun. And so in the same manner, when you train a muscle group to momentary muscular failure beyond its capabilities, it stimulates the growth mechanism and says, best you grow muscle tissue to protect yourself in the event this future bout of intensity repeats itself. So the body's ready for that. Okay. Now, so muscle mass is performance dependent, but here's the other part that people get wrong. Performance is recovery dependent. Okay. If you don't,
you need to be resting.
Correct. If you don't rest enough, you don't grow enough, if at all. I'll quote Mike Menzer on that one. Beautiful philosopher of exercise. If you don't rest enough, you don't grow enough, if at all. We don't actually, in fact, with training, we do not grow muscle when we're training. We break down muscle when we're training. And after training, your body is compensating. It's putting back what was lost. And the only time it overcompensates, that is build new muscle tissue, if left untouched during a sufficient rest period. Now, you might train 3 days a week. Okay, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But why should that be set in stone till death do you part? If your goal is to increase muscle mass, which it should be, and you're training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'll give you an example. Let's say you start off on a deadlift and you're able to deadlift one set to failure for 10 reps at 60 kilograms. Now, unless you've gone up in weight or done more than 10 reps the next workout, you're not going to stimulate new intensity to grow. So there must be a reason for the body to grow. And as you go from 60, you decide to go to 65 and then 70 and eventually 100. You will reach a point of diminishing returns if you continue to give the body the same rest. Because here's me, the body is saying, here's me performing more for you. Here's you giving me the same rest. That's a pretty shitty deal, man. That's like forcing somebody to do overtime for you and not paying them more. So what I'm trying to say is you've got to compensate for the exhaustive effects of the workout by providing more rest. As the intensity goes up, so too the demands of the body go up. So what became Monday, Wednesday, Friday may now be Monday, Thursday, Sunday. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And this is why
Wow.
people can't get the results, is they train hard, but they're not resting hard.
And the thing is, all this makes sense, but it's just not clear because we get into, as humans, we just kind of get into these patterns of doing
Like I said
things, like you
earlier,
say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or, you know.
we get paid for the week. We go to school by the week. We may as well just fit the entire human body by the week. It doesn't work like that. The human body is a lot more complex than that. I've had clients go on holiday, come back, 2 weeks sabbatical, and they've lifted heavier or better than before they went on holiday. So what happened? Did they get weaker? No, they got stronger. Now, you can't get smaller muscles when you're stronger. What you're supposed to do is you get bigger, get weaker. Clearly, as they gain strength, they gain size over time. So you need to use your discernment, and you need to be very careful about, don't just go to the gym because it's a Monday. And by the way, we call Monday guilt day because everybody falls off the wagon on the weekend. Monday used to be our busiest days in the gym. So don't go to school. Don't go to the gym on a Monday because you've got to do so and because you were being naughty on the weekend. But if your body's not up for it, you have to know how to discern between training because you have to train or training because you're fully recovered to train. If I'm not fully ready to bend bars in the gym and beat my personal best, I'm not going into the gym. It's not going to happen. Okay.
You gotta really be like motivated and I'm gonna do this or not at all.
Yeah, you've got to want to go and train and look at of course, you got to write down your results and try and beat them every time. I knew this early on between sprinters and marathon runners. I trained both of them, Dave. So something is going on in the sprinters training. Let's say you knew nothing about exercise science. You knew absolutely nothing about exercise science. All you had was anecdotal evidence of different somatotypes, different body types in Olympic competition. Let's use track and field. You have a marathon runner, you have a sprinter. This is the perfect example of hormones working the way they're supposed to work. Well, depending on what your sport is. Now, both a marathon runner and a sprinter, they have one common denominator, and that they run. Both of them run, but it's not that they run. Okay. The second common denominator they have is that neither the marathon runner nor the sprinter train to look a particular way. No sprinter goes out to say, I want to go out and look like a sprinter. No marathon runner says the same thing. So that's two common denominators they have. Number one, they run. Number two, they don't go out to train to look a certain way, like most people do in the gym. They want to look a certain way. They have an aesthetic goal, which is fine. How they look, and this is number three, the common denominator, how they look is the residual outcome of how they train. A sprinter looks like that because of how they train, Dave. A marathon runner looks like that because of how they train. From block 1 to block 8, all of my sprinters look identical. Tiny waistlines, big quads, big glutes, ripped abs, massive shoulders. Now these guys sprint 100 meters. No more, no less, 100 meters. Here's the other thing, by the way. You've heard of HIIT, right? High intensity interval training. Okay, cool. Why are you timing the recovery? Why are you sprinting for 20, 30 seconds, 40 seconds? By the way, if you're doing more than 20 seconds, you're not doing HIIT. You're going hard for 30. If you can pace yourself for a minute on, a minute off, that's not HIIT training. That's you going hard and timing and pacing yourself. Because when I was training these sprinters and they were looking like metabolic gods, all of them with atrocious diets, by the way, atrocious diets. When I was training them, one thing we never did, they would sprint the straight and then we'll take a walk around and they would give me a signal if they were ready. And if not, take another lap. Remember what I said before? Intensity is, muscle mass is performance dependent, but performance is recovery dependent. True? So why would you time your recovery if you're doing a HIIT session? You go out as hard as you can for 10, 20 seconds, take as much rest as you think you need to then repeat the same bout. And if you can't repeat, and if your intensity slows down, don't say, I'll do 8 sets. I'll do 10 sets and get out of the gym. What if after 4 sets, your intensity is left? You should leave then. Keep it to 4 sets. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, your body's basically telling you, okay, I need to recover now. Let me recover properly,
You
right?
got it. Yeah. So muscle mass is performance dependent. These guys are growing muscle tissue because when they're training in that state, and I'll share something else you should know. I got this from a doctor. I'm trying to remember his name now. Forgot his name. It'll come to me in a second. He said the cells are using sugar and fat for fuel. Sugar and fat. And depending on the intensity of effort, will determine what substrates get used for energy. When you're going super high intensity, the body's using glucose for fuel in the moment. Now, super duper high intensity, a sprint for 10, 20 seconds will use up sugar for energy. Guys are saying, yeah, but I want to burn fat for fuel. That whole fat burning zone theory, I want to burn fat for fuel. So I don't want to sprint. I want to jog it. I'll jog it, valet parking jog. I'll go get your Mercedes, a valet parking jog, and I'll just go and do it. I'll do 30 minutes of that. I'm in the fat burning zone. Cool. Guess what? In that half an hour, yes, you will burn body fat, mobilize body fat for energy. Here's the problem with that. Just because something is good does not make it a good thing, or something is true doesn't make it a good thing. Here's why. Because what studies have shown, whatever energy system you bring during your workout, you burn the opposite for the next day or two. I'll give you an example. When you're using up fat for fuel during the workout, the next day or two, your body switches energy systems and starts using sugar for fuel, and it gets that sugar by the rise in cortisol. I said cortisol earlier converts your muscle tissue as fuel, as sugar, and uses that. And that's what makes you pare down muscle tissue over time. Okay? So you are altering the cortisol testosterone response by you going what we call zone 2 training. That's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens, muscle fibers are incredibly, they have neuroplasticity, they have a morphology to them, and they morph based on the exercise that they're exposed to. So if you're doing a jog every single day, i.e. mimicking the life of a marathon runner, your body gets you more efficient at that. It says, okay, if this is the case, Our fast twitch fibers, which are responsible for about 85% of muscular growth, we don't need them anymore. Let's make this individual more efficient at this activity. So it breaks down muscle tissue, it converts the type 2, 2A, 2B fibers, which are the fast twitch fibers, into type 1 fibers. And they're a lot thinner, they're a lot smaller, they're a lot more frail. And now you become more efficient at running. Sure enough, you've lost weight, but you've lost muscle tissue and you've lost fat. And you start morphing into a marathon runner. On the flip side, what about a sprinter? What are they doing for 10, 20 seconds? They're going to go, bah, 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 bah. 10, 20 seconds, okay? Take as much recovery as they need to get their breath back. In that 10, 20 seconds, guess what hormones go up? Testosterone, growth hormone. They both go bang through the roof. So too does norepinephrine and epinephrine, because it's a stress response, okay? And because they're not prolonging the duration of the activity, cortisol is in check. Remember, cortisol's goal is to mobilize glycogen, and the longer you go into training, the more cortisol rises over time. So you have to know when to sort of check out. So cortisol's in check, growth hormone's going up, testosterone's going up, norepinephrine's going up. All these beautiful hormones are going up that are responsible for maximizing muscle tissue and dropping body fat. And it gets better because remember, they're using sugar for fuel during that bout. And what studies have showed, the energy systems you bring during workout, you burn the opposite for the next day or two. What are they using for fuel the next couple of days? Body fat. So a marathon runner burns fat for fuel. That jog, the valet jog, burns fat for fuel. But the next day or two, you're breaking down muscle tissue to use as sugar for fuel. A sprinter uses sugar for fuel during their training. For the next day or two, they're burning body fat. It flips. And that's what makes them look the way that they do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's so interesting because you think you're doing the right thing and your body's doing the right thing for you. But because of the way you're doing it, your body ends up working against your goals.
It does. And then it gets worse on this jog because over time, so number one, growth hormone goes down, testosterone goes down, cortisol goes up. You lose muscle tissue, you lose body fat, but you become from a big peg to a small peg. You're still jiggly. You're not tight like a drum. You're not pulled back tight and lean, okay? It gets worse because we have a metabolic set point now because now, let's say the half an hour jog may burn 300 so-called calories, as Bart K calls it, so-called calories. Over time, your body becomes more efficient and those 300 become 250 and 200. Your body's trying to get better at the exercise. So it's trying to salvage energy to do that in. So it's a losing battle. It's a losing battle to do that if your goal is getting as lean as possible. And when you understand, because success leaves clues, Dave. If you knew nothing about exercise science and all you had was the anecdotal evidence of athletes, the most favorable optimal body composition, favorable optimal meaning maximum muscle, minimal body fat, are two athletes in Olympic competition. One's a sprinter, the other one is a gymnast. They're the two. They're the two. Now, two exercises gymnasts do. So you know what they are. Very simple. Chin-ups and dips. One pulling movement, one pushing movement. I'll add a third one in there, squats. So if you had to do a workout for life, that would be your three exercises. A chin-up, a dip, and a squat. Push-pull legs. Especially a dip. A dip is the upper body squat. So life gives us clues. Life gives us, indications what to do, what not to do. And I think we have to be real aware of that. Okay, I want to train like a sprinter. What do? They train for performance. They lift with weights because they need more power and speed. And because I train like that, I'll start looking like one. I'm not saying identical, but you'll be on track. But we have this, when it comes to fat loss, we have this reductionistic approach. Dinah Schwarzbein said it perfectly. You've got to build the metabolism to burn fat, not destroy it in order to do so. Build the metabolism, build muscle tissue, raise the metabolic rate. Don't starve yourself into fat loss. Another big, big mistake. And I see it very common in the carnivore space. Here's why. You've got a thing, we spoke about metabolic set point or metabolic damage. I did a consult with a lady one time. She was in her mid-40s, weighed about 53 kilos, but had so much cellulite, so much cellulite. We did some dietary recalling. I said to her, for the next 5 days, everything you eat, I need you not only to write it down, but measure it. Measure everything, just for 5 days. Turns out, after 5 days, she was averaging 800 calories a day. Okay?
Only 800.
Only 800. And she was eating like a sparrow, basically. Just nibbles here and there. Insufficient protein, clearly, but total food about 800. She was just a bit of a nibbler, just nibbled. And now, I said to her, look, could you see the issue here? She's like, I know, I'm not eating much food. Why am I carrying all these extra body fat? She's what I classified as skinny fat. Skinny fat is the clinical diagnosis for normal weight obesity. With clothes on, that look relatively lean. Take them off, there's pockets of fat everywhere. Okay, that's skinny fat. So the issue a lot of people have, especially in the carnivore space, because carnivore satiates you so easily. And they love to fast. And I'm a big advocate of fasting, but if it means if we're fasting and we're not eating enough in that window, you have to have this gut distensibility to allow more food volume in. And if you haven't, then best you get to eating sufficiently enough, because remember, the body says this, you give me less, I'll burn less. Simple. Give me less, I'll burn less. Give me more, I'll burn more. Give me extra more, I'll store the rest as body fat. But if you give me less, I'll burn less. And so it creates this metabolic damage, the lack of weight loss disproportionate to calorie intake, meaning the reason why you're not losing body fat is not because you're overeating or eating at maintenance, but severely undereating. And that's a big issue we have. So when I'm doing some consults with carnivores and they've got a goal, they even struggle with that concept because they can't, because it provides just profound satiety on the carnivore diet. You can't fit more food in. The first thing we do is meet a protein goal. Now, there are different ways to meet a protein goal. Some say 1.75 grams of protein per lean kilogram of lean body weight, and I think it's okay, but I think it's too difficult. Here's an easy one. Are you ready? 1 gram of protein per centimeter in height. See that? Your eyebrows raised. Very few people know that one. I'll thank Bart for that one.
Interesting.
1 gram of protein per centimeter in height. I'm 183, so I aim for about 180 grams of protein per day. Okay? Now,
that makes it super easy.
Yeah, so easy. 1 gram of protein per centimeter in height. Now, a client may come to me and say, oh my goodness, Anthony, I'm 1.60 m. I just did a dietary recall for 5 days. I couldn't even get beyond 70 grams. Hey man, don't go from 70 to 160. Let's slowly, progressively increase at 10 grams every week. It's 2 eggs, or it's whatever it might be. So you slowly heal the body by giving it more food progressively over time. The other thing to note is, of course, when you're weight training, it sends a signal to the body to raise protein synthesis. So the appetite for protein goes up. So with exercise, it comes a lot more appetite to eat more protein, okay? So when you're slowly adding it over time, you're going to start noticing you look better eating more food. Fascinating. The other thing you'll notice is this lady got to 57 kilograms from 53 and looked incredible. I had her on stage as a bikini model. She did a bikini contest as well.
So she put on 4 kilos and she was looking better.
Well, think about this. Let's say we've gone from 53 to 57 and she was 27% body fat at the time from memory. If I slapped on 4 kilos to your frame and they were purely body fat, purely muscle tissue, we'll start with that first. If I whacked on 4 kilograms of lean steak around your body everywhere, now you're 57 kilograms. By default, your body fat as a percentage would go down, and even if you haven't lost any body fat. just by having more muscle to your frame. Makes sense?
Yeah.
I'll give you another one. So many people are fixated on the scale. Okay, you ready for this one? Let's say you've lost 8 pounds. You've come in and you've waved your fist. You've given me a high five. Anth, I've lost 8 pounds. We're on track. Okay, let's do a caliper test on you. I might do a body composition test. I might be I use Harpenden calipers. And I'm saying this because I've used this is an example I've had with a client, a real life example with a client. She comes in, she waves her fist at me. Oh, she's going to love it. When she watches this, she'll know that it's her. All right, so she's waved her fist and she goes, yes, we lost 7 pounds. Awesome. Let's do a fat test. 6 of those pounds were muscle tissue. Okay. I said to her, you've lost 6 pounds of muscle, 1 pound of fat based on our test. Let me do another. I did it twice. Turned out to be about 5.8 the second time around, but close to 6 pounds. I said, what on earth did you do? Oh, she went on an extended fast. I'm okay with them, but she didn't have much fat to lose. Extended fast. She lost weight, but she didn't lose body fat. Okay. I'm okay for extended fasts if you've got a lot of body fat to lose, but if you haven't got much body fat to lose and you're doing it at the time, and she lost 7 pounds and she lost 6 of those with muscle tissue and 1 of those with body fat, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah.
So now she's come to see me 7 pounds lighter, but her metabolic panel was worse than she did before she did the fast. Okay, so just because you're gaining weight does not mean all that's body fat. And just because the second part to that is just because you haven't lost weight does not mean nothing's happened. I had another bikini competitor. For 6 weeks straight, her weight was the same, 65 kilos. She wouldn't drop below 65. But the reason why we didn't have the alarm bells go off is because her caliper sites, her subcutaneous sites, they were dropping week after week, Dave. And so I said, you're getting leaner. You're maintaining muscle. You're just getting leaner. Keep doing what we're doing. And her photos were coming in, which is a really important indicator, by the way, of progress is photos. The scale by itself is the worst metric on its own because it does not accommodate for true progress. What are we losing? What are we gaining here? If you gain weight, just because you gain weight does not make it all fat. Just because you've maintained your weight does not mean nothing's happened. And just because you've lost weight does not mean all of it's body fat.
Just as you're talking, I'm kind of thinking relying on the scale to work out what's going on with your body is kind of like relying on calories to decide what foods you should eat.
Oh, that's great. Perfect.
Mm.
Perfect example. These are all poor metrics. They're not the ones that matter. Now, if you have a body transformation to do, let's say you put 12 weeks in, it pays you early on to, I love the quote, you can't manage what you don't measure. Now, I'm not saying measuring calories till death do you part. I'm not saying that. But one common denominator I have noticed in all of my fitness girls and guys that got themselves into peeled condition, we're talking very lean, essential territory, unhealthy, of course. We call it a peak condition for a reason. It's like peak condition. It's like you can't stay there. It's like climbing Everest and pitching a tent. You can't do that. It's peak condition for a reason. You go up and you come back down. You go up to the top, take as many Instagram photos as you can, and then come back down a little bit, okay? So anyway, one common denominator that they all had, Dave, was they measured something. Let's not call them calories for Bart. Let's not call them effective energy or mass, but they measured something. Because you can't manage what you don't measure. Okay, and so they're doing something. They're measuring something. Maybe it's calories, maybe it's not, but it's something. Even if you go in carnivore, take your top 6 foods that you enjoy to eat. Number 1, you enjoy eating them. Number 2, they keep you full and satisfied. And number 3, they don't cause you issues. Top 6 things. Then do a dietary recall over 5 days to see as far as numbers are concerned, when you crunch in your numbers are concerned, what are we eating that's maintaining your current body right now? Everybody has a number associated to what touches the sides and satiates you. There's a number associated to that. And when we have that number, we can have a look what we can do from there. In quantum physics, there's an irrefutable law that states nothing matters in and of itself, meaning nothing just materializes out of nothing. You are doing something to create that reality. And if we can find a way to quantify this reality, now we can not change anything as far as foods. If you enjoy eating those 6 carnivore foods, keep them in. But let's start getting deeper and seeing, are we having enough total food? Are we having enough total protein for the day? What's causing us to create this reality? And what must we do moving forward to create another reality? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I like the idea of, it doesn't matter what it is, really, just having that baseline so you can measure from there.
Yes.
Is really good.
Yes. Now, the food quality matters. The food quality matters because if it's not within your DNA, if it's a food-like substance, it's contraindicated. I don't care if you got a 6-pack. I don't care if you're in shape. If you're not eating what's designed specifically for you as a species, that is contraindicated. So don't tell me because you're in shape, you have the bragging rights that it's healthy. Healthy does not mean fit. Health is the absence of disease. That's the definition of health. Okay, so the food quality matters. Food quality drives food quantity. And food quantity drives food frequency. Here's an example. If you're not eating the food you're supposed to eat, you're designed to eat as a human being. The food quality drives the food quantity. You're going to want to eat more of those foods because your body is trying to send you a signal. When it's hungry, it's not saying feed me more. It's saying feed me the right stuff. Give me what I need.
Something's missing.
Correct.
Yeah, something's missing. Give me more of what I need.
You got it. Give me what I need. Give me the right stuff here. Now, if you give me the right stuff, guess what? I'll leave you alone. So the food quality, if you get the food quality right, how many people know that they can't eat that much on carnivore and it just hits them and say, I'm done. That's it. I'm done. If you get the food quality right, the food quantity takes care of itself, which is why people get lean on carnivore. Outside the fact of stabilizing hormones, we're not secreting insulin, but in essence, we're not actually eating that much. And because the food quality has driven the quantity and you're done, you can go longer without eating now. I like to call it inadvertent fasting.
I like that.
You're fasting by default because you're just genuinely not hungry. Get to a place where you've given the body exactly the nutrients it needs. And so it will leave you alone. Now you're fasting by default. Now you're fasting inadvertently. In fact, it should be called intermittent feasting.
Yeah.
Okay. The prime state is the prime metabolic state is the fasting state. So we're intermittently feasting and then going a lot longer. Now, we spoke earlier about getting enough nutrients in and enough food in. Don't just go fasting straight away because if you're doing carnivore, number one, it provides profound satiety. So you're not going to eat as much. And number two, if you try and do a fast, you're digging yourself deeper into a hole by closing your eating window there. So the first rule really is to heal the body with enough food and then slowly close the window to a place whereby if you can fit more volume of food, enough for a day's worth of food in a smaller window, you can do so. Does that make sense?
Yeah, as you say, it for most people, I think it does become inadvertent. It just happens over time naturally because you're just like, yeah, I don't need to have dinner today, and then the next day it's like, oh yeah, I could probably skip dinner all the time now.
That's right. And now you're doing exactly what the body's designed to do. Now you're forgetting about it. It's not even a big deal for you anymore. You're getting in shape effortlessly the way you have, effortlessly. How can you not be in shape when you're eating like this? Now, the people that do this way of eating, Dave, a carnivore is an opportunity, not an obligation. They're not obliged to do carnivore every day. People think, don't you get sick and tired of eating the same way? Hey, brother, listen. When you feel the way that I feel, when your brain works the way that my brain works every day, when you get the sleep that I get every day, when you get the skin and the performance and the vigor and the libido and everything else, when you get to feel what I feel, you would never be asking me that question. Because the people that do carnivore don't do it because they have to do it. They do it because once they've reached that level, nothing tastes, nothing feels as good. And here's the biggest illusion, Dave. The biggest illusion that's been sold to us is that we can feel as good as carnivore makes you feel, or whatever diet you're choosing, as carnivore makes you feel, while still maintaining a balanced diet and eating all the food groups. That is the biggest lie in the world.
Yeah. They've, and that's just, and then it's just marketing now.
Yeah.
It's just,
We're being marketed to, clearly, you spoke about that in one of your videos. That's why they want us to eat multiple food groups, because we can't be marketed to otherwise. That's the reason they do it. Okay, so the people that do carnivore, they don't do it because they have to do it. They do it because nothing makes them look, feel, or perform as good as anything else. And that's the truth. That's the truth behind it.
So to bring this full circle,
yes,
since 2009, how's your churn rate?
my churn rate at the moment is well, I would probably say I've got is not 0%, but I've got a pretty good churn rate now, because I guess after creating the LeanSeven, the online course, and sharing it with, it's getting close to, I think we're just, as far as transformations are concerned, I think I've hit the 4-digit 1,000 plus of transformations since 2009. Okay, when I discovered the LeanSeven. It's a blessing, because I think you can, if you're passionate about what you do, you tend to want to dive deeper into the subjects of it and learn more. And there's nothing, I continuously learn every day, but I think people feel your passion. They can sort of see that you want to help them. It's almost like, I was a big fan of Bruce Lee growing up as a kid, and one of his movies, I think it was Enter the Dragon. It's one of his last movies. I think it was the last movie he filmed. He's on a boat, and he's trying to get the guy onto a smaller boat so they can go on an island and fight. And he calls it the art of fighting without fighting. And he calls it the art of fighting without fighting because the guy, he escorts him onto the boat first, but then he doesn't jump on the boat, and the guy's by himself now, just taking off. So it's the art of fighting without fighting. Well, I call it the art of selling without selling. You kind of, when you share so much of yourself, remember, knowledge only has value. Knowledge is like money. It only has value once it leaves your hand. And it's the same with knowledge. It doesn't have value holding on to it. When you get all this knowledge and you're able to share it in a palatable way for people to truly understand it. I'm not here to try and just like baffle you with science. I'm here to really simplify it, because great speakers make the fewest words travel the furthest. Great speakers do that. And what you say, how you present it, how you speak, the words that you use, trying to simplify things, when you can really simplify it for somebody and they get it, they can start seeing, your work shine then. And then, of course, I'm in Adelaide, and Adelaide's a very small place. And so people talk. And when you transform somebody, they hear about it, and that's how it kind of creates I guess what would you call it? Like a cascade effect of other people wanting to know more. And so, yeah, if you just focus on being of service and doing really good work, I think you'll go a long way. How you do anything is how you do everything.
Mm. Yeah.
How you do anything, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, really important. And very well said.
I was going to share a little area that's it's very dear to me and in transformations, and it's not necessarily the knowledge, it's the personal development behind the knowledge. And a lot of my one-on-ones, or even like people that I work with online, offline, it's the personal development is crucially important, because I want to share a story with you so you can, and I'll bring it around why personal development is important. It is a bit esoteric. It is a bit kind of woo-woo, but it calls you to think outside the box, okay? Now, when I was living back in Melbourne in 2012, I remember I was training a client at a gym, and it was an arranged marriage, and he wasn't happy with the fact that his wife didn't like him and also didn't like their kid. She wasn't attracted to him, but it was an arranged marriage and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now, he told me that she also showed bouts of, I don't know whether they diagnosed her as schizophrenic, but she had sort of bouts of, like, she would really just get aggressive. And he asked me if I could come to the house and meet her and speak to her and find out a bit more, and maybe just see if I can just, I guess, do some life coaching, which was what I also do. So I said, okay. So I texted her, or I called her, left a text, and then she texted back, sorry, I'm not interested, thank you. Okay, so okay, cool, no worries. The next day, the next day, right? So I texted her to catch up for a session. She canceled that day. The next day on the news, she's on the news. Baby found strangled to death in Scotchman's Creek. Scotchman's Creek, man. She took the baby and she drowned it and killed it. Okay. Now, I want to share the importance of what I'm about to share here. And this is where it gets a little esoteric, but I want you to start thinking outside the box here. What I was going to tell her at the time was that there are a gajillion different realities of you that are happening right now. Just picture that for a second. Just picture multiple realities. There's a reality of you as a sidewalk bum on Swanston Street right now. That reality is happening right now. There's a reality of you really severely overweight and sick. That reality is happening right now. There's a reality of you in Japan, really lean shape, very healthy, no issues wrong with abs, and then you're experiencing that reality right this moment. So all these realities are happening in this moment of now, but you're only experiencing one of a gajillion other realities. So the question is, why are you experiencing this reality and not any other reality is the question. And here's what unlocks a reality, so you know, okay? There are 3 algorithms that unlock realities. I'm trying to find my camera. 3. So the first algorithm is everything we think about. So our thoughts, okay? Everything we speak about, so our words. And finally, our actions. Thoughts, words, and actions. Now, keynote to make, action finishes the miracle process of reality, meaning it unlocks the reality. Action does that. If this woman thought about killing the baby, but never spoke about it to anybody or never acted on it, that would only unlock one level of reality to her, just the thought, okay? But if she expressed that thought into a word, because remember, words are thoughts expressed verbally. That's what a word is. So if she decided to entertain the idea of the thought, but then express it into a word, would that change her reality a little bit, Dave?
It becomes closer to reality, right?
It does. And not only that, but if you've shared it with somebody, you might be done for premeditation. You could be done for death threats. So automatically going from a thought to a word changes everything, everything. So it's different. It unlocks another level of reality, but it's only once you pull the trigger. The reality of her in jail for first-degree murder was happening all along. She just never unlocked it. Okay? So once you do the action, you do the time, you do the crime, you do the time, you do the deed. Once you do the action, now that unlocks the reality of a reality that was there all along. It was there the whole time, Dave. This is why I want to use it as a positive, okay? Here's how we turn it around as a positive. If every reality exists, and it exists right now, you're born in the 70s, right? 70s? Okay, I'm a 79's
Yeah,
child.
74.
74, cool. So you would have gone through the Amstrad, Commodore 64, those. Okay, cool. So when I was young, I used to see a CD-ROM, and you pop it into the disc and you wonder, I've got a joystick now. How is it when I'm going up? When I'm pressing up, the cursor goes up. When I hit fire, it fires. How does the TV know that whatever I'm doing with the joystick is appearing on the TV? Here's the answer, and I'm not the best with these algorithms, but it's all printed on the disc. Every outcome is a completed event, and life is a bit like that. Everything that could ever happen has already happened. We get to choose which reality we want to experience. So the reality of you being in jail for first-degree murder is happening right now. You are simply not experiencing it happening right now. And to experience it happening right now, you must call forth thought, word, and action in direct alignment to that reality, if that makes sense. Where it turns good is there's a reality of everybody out there who's healthy, who's in shape, and who's living a prosperous, fully enriched life. That reality is happening right now. The difference for many people is they're not experiencing that reality. And to experience that reality, they must put together thought, word, and action. Especially action. The actions people take must be in direct alignment to the reality they wish to experience. Okay? So I want to use that as a means, like, who must you be to have what you want? Who must you be? Zig Ziglar said it perfectly. You got to be before you can do, and you've got to do before you can have. Zig said it perfectly then, Zig Ziglar. So first you've got to be this thing called health. You've got to be healthy. And then from this place of beingness, you start doing the healthy practices. And as you do the healthy practices, you start having the experience, the reality of health that was there all along. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's how it works with manifestation. And so I encourage people who are listening right now, a great question: who must I be to attract the reality I want to attract? What version, what platform must you have to climb up at and play from to attract that new reality? Eli Cohen once had a quote. He said, "Without continuous personal development, all you are is all you will ever be, and hell starts when the person you are meets the person you could have been." Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Could you imagine, like, seeing Dave Mack in the future? Let's say the one before this transformation, you've bumped into this version of yourself in the street, and you've gone, Dave, like this lean version, the fat version of you saw this lean, healthy version, and then the lean version looks at the overweight version. Dave, what happened? Here's like discipline, and here's neglect. Neglect is on this side, discipline on the other side. So that's when hell starts, when the person you could have been the person you are meets the person you could have been. There is no greater success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. We know that, but there is no greater hell than unfulfilled potential. That's to know on a deep level, you could be more, do more, have more, but you fail to ever experience it. That is hell, man. Wayne Dyer said it perfectly. He said, do not leave this place with the music still inside you. So get to a place where you've really met your full potential, is what I'm trying to say here.
Very important message.
It is.
Yeah. So, Anthony, how can people get in contact with you and learn more about the LeanSeven?
Awesome. If they go to the website LeanSeven, SEVN, by the way, not the number 7, so lean7.com.au, you'll be able to scroll down and see the testimonials. There's a few video ones as well. Then you can either listen to the info call, which runs through exactly what the LeanSeven program is, and then just simply book a call. At the bottom, it says book a call. You just leave in your details, and then we would, I think it takes you into a Calendly link, and then it allows you to schedule in a time wherever you are on the planet. And then we would have a little chat. And in the chat, we just speak about your goals. Basically, where are you right now? What your history was like? What were you trying to achieve? How long you've been trying to achieve that for? And most importantly, what stopped you in the past from achieving it? And then just going from there, we can maybe have a little chat and see if there's a fit. And that's the best way to access. And also, they can look at the LeanSeven, which is our Instagram. And so, yeah, so it's the LeanSeven on Instagram. So
awesome. Well, thank you, fellow Melburnian. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us today. I really appreciate your time, Anthony.
I have to also commend you on your listening skills and, you know, how you engage in conversation, like you allow the speaker to speak. And that's what a great interviewer does. Thank you so much. And we've been going for an hour and 42 minutes. Well, I've been going for an hour and 42 minutes. You've been kind of listening in. So it's a pleasure. I've really enjoyed that.